I can't pinpoint when I started dreading his hands. Not the look of them, big, calloused, knuckles scarred from years of who knows what, but the feel of them. The way they'd land on me, heavy and sure, like they owned me. His name was Matt, and we'd been friends since I was 14, back when I was the quiet kid who didn't fit anywhere. He was 16 then, taller, louder, the kind of guy who'd pull you into his orbit whether you wanted it or not. I liked that at first. Felt seen, you know? But looking back, it's those hands I remember most. The first time he clapped me on the shoulder, I flinched, and he laughed, deep and rough, like I'd told a joke. "You're jumpy," he said, squeezing till it hurt. I laughed too because that's what you do, but I should have known then. Those hands weren't letting go. We grew up in a nowhere town. Strip malls, dusty lots, houses with peeling paint. Matt's place was a trailer out by the railroad tracks, where the air always smelled like oil and the trains rattled the windows every night. I'd go over after school, sit on his sagging couch, play video games while he sprawled next to me, one arm slung over the backrest, fingers drumming too close to my neck. He'd always start small, poking my ribs, ruffling my hair, but it never stayed small. One day, he grabbed my wrist mid-game, twisted it till the controller clattered to the floor. "My pay attention," he said, grinning, holding me there while I yanked back. My arm ached after, but I didn't say anything, just picked up the controller, kept playing. He watched me, eyes glinting, like he was testing how much I'd take. It got worse when I hit 15. I was scrawny, 5'2", barely 110 pounds, while Matt had bulked up, lifting weights in his backyard, shirt off, skin slick with sweat. He'd drag me out there sometimes, say, "Spot me," then flip it around, shove me to the ground, pin me under his knees, laughing while I flailed. "Come on, fight me," he'd growl, his hands clamping my shoulders, pressing until my bones felt bruised. I'd wheeze, "Stop." But he'd just lean closer, breath hot on my face, and say, "Make me." The air would go still after, the hum of cicadas outside louder than my heartbeat, and I'd lie there staring at the sky, wondering why I didn't run. He had this thing about control, I think. Like the time I tried leaving early, had to help Mom with groceries, and he blocked the door, arms crossed, staring me down. "You're not going anywhere," he said, voice flat, no grin this time. I mumbled something about being late, but he stepped closer, hands flexing at his sides, and I froze. 5 minutes of silence. He didn't move, just watched me, till I sat back down, hands shaking. Later, he acted like it never happened, tossing me a soda, saying, "You're too serious, man." But I couldn't shake it. That feeling of being trapped, like his hands were still on me even when they weren't. School didn't help. Our friends, guys from the basketball team mostly, thought Matt was hilarious. "He's just messing with you," they'd say when I showed up with a bruised arm or a limp. One time, we were in Josh's truck, headed to the lake, and Matt wouldn't stop jabbing my ribs, hard, till I was curled against the window, biting my lip to keep quiet. Josh glanced back, saw me, and just turned up the radio. "Boys will be boys," he muttered, like that explained it. I wanted to scream, "This isn't normal," but the words stuck. Matt caught my eye in the rear view, smirked, and jabbed me again, his hand lingering like a warning. The real breaking point came that fall. I was 16 by then, still hanging out with him. Don't ask me why. I think I was scared to lose the only friend I had. We were in his trailer, sprawled on the floor, some dumb action movie blaring. He'd been quiet all day, which wasn't like him, just sitting there, cracking his knuckles, staring at the wall. I was halfway through a bag of chips when he turned, slow, and said, "You're weak, you know that?" Before I could answer, he lunged, knees on my chest, hands pinning my arms so fast I couldn't move. I laughed at first, nervous, thinking it was the usual game. But he didn't laugh back. His grip tightened, nails digging into my wrists, and I felt the air leave me, my ribs creaking under his weight. "Matt, get off," I said, voice shaking. He didn't. His hands slid up, slow, till they were on my neck, not choking, just resting, thumbs pressing where my pulse hammered. I thrashed, legs kicking, but he was too heavy, too strong. "Stop it," I gasped, barely audible, and his eyes locked on mine, cold, empty, like he didn't even see me. My vision blurred, chest burning, and I thought, clear as day, he's gonna kill me. Not a question, a fact. His lips twitched, almost a smile, and he pressed harder, just enough to make me gag. I don't know how long it lasted, seconds, minutes, but I clawed at his arms, nails raking skin, till he finally let go, rolling off like it was nothing. "You're too easy," he said, grabbing a beer, leaving me panting on the floor, neck throbbing. I didn't go back after that. Took a week to work up the nerve. Texted him I was done, blocked his number when he called, over and over, leaving voicemails I never played. My wrists were bruised purple for days, neck sore like I'd been strangled, though the marks faded fast. I told my mom I fell skateboarding. She believed me, didn't ask why I stopped leaving the house. Friends noticed too. Josh asked once, "Where's Matt?" I shrugged, said, "Dunno," and he dropped it. They all did. Guess I wasn't fun without him. I moved away at 18, college, new state, fresh start. Thought I'd left it behind, but 2 years ago, I came home for Thanksgiving, driving past the tracks where his trailer used to be. It's gone now, just a patch of dirt, but I swear I felt it, that weight, like his hands were still on me. Last month, I got a call. Unknown number, no voice, just breathing, slow and deep, till I hung up. Could have been a prank, a wrong dial, but my gut twisted, picturing those hands holding the phone. Then yesterday, I found it. A scratch on my apartment door, shallow but sharp, like someone dragged a nail across it. I live alone, 3rd floor. No one's got a key. I keep telling myself it's nothing. Old building, maybe a neighbor. But at night, I hear it. A faint scrape outside like fingers brushing wood. I don't check. I lock the door, turn up the TV, try to sleep. But I feel them. His hands waiting, like they never let go. Like they're still out there, or worse, inside me, gripping tighter every day. I don't remember exactly when I first heard the sound. I was probably around 8 years old, living in a small gray house on the edge of Polk County, Tennessee. The house sat at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by dry fields and old oak trees, whose branches creaked and swayed whenever the wind blew. My dad worked at the lumber mill 20 miles away, leaving before dawn and coming home after dark, which left me alone with Ellen, my stepmother. My real mom had died when I was 4. A car accident Dad never talked much about, just saying she's gone. Ellen showed up a year later, tall and thin, her light brown hair tied back in a tight ponytail, always wearing long-sleeved sweaters even in the sticky Tennessee summer. She smiled a lot when Dad was around, her voice sweet like honey. But when the door closed and it was just the two of us, that smile vanished, leaving behind eyes as cold as stone. The sound started on a winter night when light snow dusted the backyard. I was lying in bed, the blanket pulled up to my chin, trying to stay warm in a room with no heater. Then I heard it. Thump, thump, soft, but clear, coming from under the bed. I thought it was a mouse. Our house was old, with thin wooden walls and a creaky floor that groaned under every step, so mice weren't unusual. I sat up, flicked on the old bedside lamp Dad had left me, its weak yellow light spilling across the floor. I knelt down, peering under the bed. Nothing. Just a few dirty socks, a dusty plastic toy box, and thick shadows. I turned off the lamp, lay back down, but the sound came again, thump, thump, slow, steady, like someone tapping their fingers on wood. My heart beat faster, but I didn't call Dad. He was asleep in the next room, exhausted from work, and I didn't want to wake him. Finally, I called Ellen. My voice trembled, small in the quiet space. She walked in, holding a mug of black coffee, steam curling up in the dim hallway light. She wore a gray robe, her hair loose over her shoulders, her eyes narrowing as she looked at me. "What is it?" she asked, her voice sharp like a blade. I stammered, "There's a noise under the bed." She tilted her head, silent for a moment, then said, "Don't make things up. Go to sleep." But as she turned to leave, I heard her mutter under her breath, so low it was almost inaudible, "Need to teach him some manners." The door clicked shut, and the thump came back, faster this time, like it was retaliating. The next morning, everything changed. I woke up, threw off the blanket, and realized my favorite sneakers, the white Nikes Dad got me for my birthday, were gone. I was sure I'd left them right by my door last night, toes pointing out like always. I tore my room apart, under the bed, in the closet, even under my pillow, but they were nowhere. I ran downstairs to the kitchen, where Ellen stood slicing potatoes, the knife gliding through with a steady chack-chack. "Ellen, have you seen my shoes?" I asked, my voice hesitant. She didn't look up. "What shoes? I haven't seen any shoes." I swore I hadn't misplaced them. I was careful with my stuff, especially those shoes. She turned, her eyes icy cold, cutting through me. "If you lost something, don't blame me. Get to school." I stood there, mouth dry, feeling like something was wrong, but I didn't dare argue. From then on, things got strange. Little things of mine started disappearing. Charlotte's Web from the library, the green crayon I loved drawing with, even the knit hat Mom made me before she died, worn and frayed, but more precious than anything. I asked Dad once while he sat at the dinner table eating with tired eyes. "Dad, I can't find Mom's hat," I said. He ruffled my hair, gave a small smile. "You're forgetful, bud. Ellen'll help you look." But Ellen didn't look. She just stared at me from across the table, lips pressed tight, then turned away like she hadn't heard. I started dreading asking, dreading that look. Eyes not angry, but empty, like I wasn't even there. The sound under the bed didn't stop. It came every night, no longer steady but random. Thump at 11 p.m., then silence, then thump, thump, thump at 2 a.m. I began to fear my own room, the darkness under the bed, even the wind rattling the window because it made me jump. I tried telling Dad again, but he just sighed. "Old house, kid. Probably the pipes. Don't worry." I wanted to believe him, but the sound didn't feel like pipes. It was too close, too alive. I didn't push it, because whenever I mentioned Ellen, he'd say, "Don't bother her, she's got enough on her plate." Then Ellen set rules. One morning, she banged on my door at 6 a.m., holding a red plastic stopwatch, the kind Dad used to time jobs. "From now on," she said, her voice calm but hard as steel, "you've got exactly 10 minutes to get up, get dressed, and eat breakfast. If you're late, there'll be consequences." I thought she was kidding. Who makes an 8-year-old follow a schedule like that? But the next day, when I lost 2 minutes looking for clean socks, she grabbed my arm, her long red nails digging into my skin like claws. "You think I'm playing?" she hissed, yanking me to the kitchen. I stumbled, my knee hitting the floor, but she didn't stop. She stood there, the stopwatch ticking in her hand, watching me eat every bite of my peanut butter toast, her eyes unblinking. If I slowed down, she tapped the knife on the table. Chack, a sharp sound that made me flinch, dropping crumbs. The consequences grew. Once I forgot my math book at school, rushed to the bus and left it on my desk. When Dad left for work, Ellen came into my room, holding the wooden ruler Dad kept in the garage for measuring. She didn't say a word, just looked at me sitting on the bed, then struck my hand. 3 times, each a loud crack echoing in the small space. Pain shot through my arm, but I didn't cry. I didn't dare. "You need to learn," she said, her voice as casual as if she were teaching me to tie my shoes. My hand swelled, purple bruises blooming across the skin. Dad asked about it that night over mashed potatoes and fried chicken. Ellen smiled, resting a hand on his shoulder. "He fell in the backyard. Too rough." Dad nodded, believed her, and I sat there, silent, feeling like I was fading away. The sound under the bed became an obsession. I started thinking it wasn't a mouse or pipes. It was too deliberate, like someone waiting for me to fall asleep. One night, I mustered the courage, lying flat on the cold floor, lifting the blanket that draped over the bed. It was pitch black underneath, the smell of old wood and dust hitting my nose. I grabbed Dad's flashlight from the drawer. Its weak beam swept through the dark. I saw a shadow, long, still, like someone's arm. My heart pounded. My breath caught. I aimed the light closer. Nothing, just the plastic toy box. But when I turned it off, the thump hit right under my head, louder, like it knew I was looking, like it was angry. I started writing everything down in a little notebook, a lined one Dad bought me at the convenience store. I logged dates, times, every weird thing. March 12th, thumping at 1 a.m. March 14th, green crayon gone. Ellen told me not to ask. I hid it under the rug by my bed, where the floor warped slightly. But one day, I came home from school, and the notebook was gone. That night, Ellen called me to the kitchen. She sat at the table, the notebook in front of her, open to the page where I wrote, "I think Ellen's taking my stuff." She didn't yell, didn't hit, just stared, her eyes darkening like a deep well. "You think you're clever, huh?" she whispered, her voice small but chilling. Then she tore it up, page by page, pieces fluttering to the floor like snow. I stood there, hands shaking, feeling like she wasn't just ripping paper, but the last shred of my courage. The worst came when I was 10, on a fall night when Dad had a late shift. I woke at midnight to a relentless thump, 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 fast and fierce. I sat up, cold sweat running down my back, the blanket sliding to the floor. My door was ajar. I swore I'd locked it before bed. I heard footsteps, light but distinct, on the hardwood hallway, thuck, thuck, creeping closer. Then I saw Ellen's shadow in the gap, tall and thin, holding something long, maybe the ruler, maybe the kitchen knife I'd seen her use that morning. She didn't come in, just stood there staring at me through the narrow opening, her eyes glinting in the dark. I yanked the blanket over my head, pretending to sleep, but I heard her breathing, long, slow, like she was counting my heartbeats. I stayed still, barely breathing, until morning light slipped through the curtains. The next day, she acted like nothing happened, frying eggs and setting a plate in front of me with a fake smile. But when I left for school, I found my Nikes, missing for a month, neatly by my bed, filthy and wet, like they'd been dunked in backyard mud. I didn't tell Dad. He wouldn't believe me. Ellen was too good at hiding, too good at making me the liar in his eyes. But I started noticing more. She'd go to the backyard at night, when Dad was asleep, carrying a bucket and a small shovel. I peeked out my window once, saw her digging under the old oak, her shadow stretching long under the moonlight. I didn't know what it was, my stuff, something worse. I started fearing that if I spoke up, if I did anything wrong, I'd be the next thing buried there. When I was 12, Dad and Ellen split. He found out she'd been stealing money from his account, mailing it to someone. I moved with him to a small town far from Polk, never going back to that house. But last night, lying in my new apartment bed, hundreds of miles from Polk, in a place I thought was safe, I heard it, thump, thump, under the hardwood floor, slow, steady, like a heartbeat waiting. I flipped on the light, checked under the bed, the hallway. Nothing. Maybe it's memory, maybe a leftover nightmare from those years. But I locked the door, checked the windows, and kept the lights on all night. I don't know where Ellen is now. Dad said she moved somewhere in Georgia after the split. But if it's her, if she found me, I'm not sure I'd get away again. And when I close my eyes, I still hear the thump. A reminder that some things never really leave. I'm not sure how it all started, but I remember the day I met her clearly. I was 12 years old, just starting 6th grade at a small middle school on the outskirts of Dayton, Ohio. Our town wasn't anything special. Tree-lined streets, a couple of general stores, and an old movie theater where kids hung out on weekends. I was a shy kid, more into books than kickball, so I didn't have a ton of friends. But I had Tommy, my best friend since kindergarten. He's the one who introduced me to Rachel. Rachel was older than us, 15, I guessed, with long, messy black hair and pale blue eyes that stared like she knew something you didn't. She wore a faded denim jacket, even in the heat, and always carried a small red backpack. Tommy said she was a friend of his older sister, living in a neighborhood a few blocks from school. The first time we met, she was at the playground after class, leaning against the fence, watching us kick a ball around. When I tripped and dropped my water bottle, she picked it up, handed it to me, and said, "You're Jake, right?" I nodded, surprised because I'd never seen her before. "I know your name," she said with a smile, but it wasn't the kind that made me feel comfortable. After that day, Rachel started showing up everywhere. I'd see her standing at the street corner when I walked home, about 50 yards away, just watching. I'd spot her outside my classroom window, sitting on a park bench across from the school, fiddling with that red backpack. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. Small town, you run into people all the time. But then the messages started. I don't know how she got my number, maybe from Tommy, though he swore he didn't give it to her. The first one came on a Tuesday night while I was doing homework at the kitchen table. "Hey Jake, you're cute. Want to hang out?" I stared at my old Nokia phone, my fingers freezing. I texted back, "Who's this?" She replied instantly, "Rachel, you know me." I didn't respond again, but the messages kept coming. Every day she'd text, sometimes, "You like me, don't you?" Sometimes, "I want to hug you like a teddy bear." I was 12, didn't get this stuff, and it just felt weird and unsettling. I told Tommy, but he laughed it off. "She's just messing around. Rachel's quirky like that." I didn't think it was a joke. One time I texted back, "I don't want to hang out. Stop messaging me." My phone buzzed right away. "You'll regret that. I'll tell everyone you hurt me. I'll call the police." My heart pounded. I didn't know what the police could do. I hadn't done anything wrong, but the idea of being accused terrified me. I told Tommy everything, scared out of my mind. He frowned, shook his head. "She lied once about my sister hitting her. Don't worry, I believe you." I stopped replying to her that night, thinking that'd be the end of it, but I was wrong. Rachel didn't go away. She got worse. She started appearing closer to my house. One night, I peeked out my bedroom window and saw her standing under the streetlight a block away, staring up at my window. The yellow glow lit her face, making those pale blue eyes shine like an animal's. I yanked the curtain shut, my heart racing, but when I checked again 10 minutes later, she was still there, unmoving. Then my stuff started disappearing. First, it was my copy of The Hobbit from my backpack, gone the next morning, though I swore I'd left it in the outer pocket. Then my Blue Reds baseball cap, a gift from Dad. I'd set it on the back porch chair, went inside for water, came back, and it was gone. I asked Mom, but she said, "You're just careless." I didn't tell her about Rachel. She'd think I was making it up, but I knew it wasn't me. One afternoon, I found a note stuffed in our mailbox. No envelope, just folded paper with scribbled writing. "You dropped something. I'm keeping it for you." Below it, a single R. My hands shook as I tore it up and threw it in the trash. I started dreading the walk home alone. I'd take detours through the park, avoiding the corner where she'd stand, but she always found me. Once I heard footsteps behind me, soft, steady, maybe 30 feet back. I turned, and there she was, clutching her red backpack, walking slow like it was a game of tag. I ran, didn't stop until I was inside with the door locked. That night, the house phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. I didn't pick up, but the answering machine kicked on. Her voice came through, slow and deliberate. "Jake, why won't you talk to me? I just want to be friends." Mom heard it, asked who it was, but I said it was a wrong number. I didn't sleep that night, thinking about how she knew our home number. I spilled it all to Tommy. He believed me but said, "She can't do anything. Don't be scared." I wanted to trust him, but the fear had taken root. Rachel started showing up at school, sitting in the bleachers during gym, watching me run laps. The teachers didn't kick her out because she wasn't technically breaking rules. I'd see her scribbling in a notebook, glancing at me, then smiling. One day, I found a note in my locker. The lock was fine, but the paper was on top of my books. "You run too slow. I like you better when you're still." I threw it away, but my hands trembled so bad I dropped my whole bag. It all came crashing down one Friday night. I was home alone. Mom and Dad were out for dinner a few miles away. I was watching TV when I heard a knock, soft, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. I turned off the TV, froze, hoping they'd leave, but the knocking didn't stop. Thump, thump, thump. I crept to the door, peeked through the peephole, and saw Rachel standing there in her denim jacket, clutching that red backpack. She stopped knocking, just stood, staring at the door like she knew I was there. I backed away, my heart hammering, then heard her voice through the crack. Jake, I know you're home. Open the door. I didn't answer. The house phone rang. I didn't pick up. The machine clicked on, and her voice filled the room again. If you don't open, I'll tell everyone you pushed me down. You'll get in big trouble. I called Tommy, whispering into the phone. She's at my door. What do I do? He said, don't open it. I'll come over. 15 minutes later, he showed up with his dad. Rachel was gone by then, but Tommy's dad found shoe prints in the bushes by our house, small like hers. He called the police, but they couldn't do much. No proof, just my word. They told my parents to keep an eye out, but I knew that wouldn't help. Rachel stayed away for a few days after that, and I thought she'd given up. But then I saw her again, standing across the street from Tommy's house when I went over to hang out. She waved, like everything was normal. My family moved when I was 14. Dad got a new job in Indiana. I never told my parents the whole story, just said I didn't like my old school. We left the Dayton house behind, and I didn't see Rachel again. But last year, when I was 25, living alone in Indianapolis, I got a text from an unknown number. Hey Jake, you're still cute like back then. I found you. No name, but I knew who it was. I blocked the number, started checking my locks every night, and sometimes, when I'm lying in bed, I hear a thump from somewhere in the house. Soft, steady, like someone's heartbeat waiting. I don't know if she's really out there or if it's just the memory haunting me, but I don't dare look out the window after 10 p.m. anymore.